my name is Dion. This is Watermelon Talk, and today's topic is how should Black families deal with pedophilia in the family?
We'd rather teach our young girls and young boys how to behave when certain kinds of people come around that we know have the potential to be predatory, instead of keeping those people away from people that are prone to those kinds of situations. And it's completely unfair. And I didn't always understand, like when I was younger, you know, when certain men come around, I'm sure most Black women have experienced the, oh, go take those shorts off. Why are you wearing shorts that are so short and you know X, Y, and Z is coming over? Instead of you stopping to ask yourself, why am I making my child change their clothes when they should never be looked at like that in the first place? Those kinds of things need to be stopped. And I get that every mother's intentions are not poor when it comes down to that. It's not always to protect that person, but at the same time, you have to realize what you're doing and what you're aiding in those moments.
Why do you think people sweep it under the rug? What are the reasons?
Because I feel like it's sometimes ignorance is bliss, and sometimes it's easier for them, it's more convenient for them to move past certain things than to deal with the shame that comes with a certain kind of person being involved in the family. Like it's much easier sometimes to just pray it away or you know, pretend like certain things didn't happen as opposed to addressing the issue, because when stuff like that comes into play, it requires a certain level of work internally, a certain level of looking at what I might have done wrong, what I overlooked as a mom. And I don't want to, you know, I'm speaking for mothers when I say this, but as a mom, I can't imagine how hard it must be to look at myself and where I could have stepped up and been more protective of my child in those situations. And I don't feel like it's a mother's place to blame herself, because she didn't, no mom wants that for their kids, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, you do have to acknowledge the pain that comes behind those situations. I feel like when you don't take the time to hold those people accountable, you're not considering the kind of pain that you're putting your child through all over again, in addition to the actual experience itself, and it's not fair. The lack of accountability in our community is literally sickening. Stop sweeping this stuff under the rug.
Say it.
That is,
Let's clap to
that. I feel like across the board, I think everybody at this table can agree to that.
And then from that perspective, when a parent goes through something like that, they tend to be more overprotective over their child, which cause problems as well. Mm-hmm. Because if a parent has been in a situation like that, they tend to be super overprotective of their children, which keep their children from opportunities.
But in a way that's like, no, you're not going nowhere, instead of kind of like addressing more of the person who did it to them. Like, not blaming it on them, but saying, yeah, I got to fix it through like being more, yeah.
The parents will never speak, the parents won't speak on it, but it will come out in the way that they raise their child, and it will hinder the child, because sometimes you could put fear in your child that don't need to be there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's another thing that a lot of people don't take into consideration, because a lot of parents feel like, oh, it happened to them, and then there you go with the, you can't wear shorts, or you can't spend a night at this person's house. No, you can't go to camp, or no, I don't want this person spending a night, or you can't be friends with that person because this happened to that person. It goes deep. It affects people in more than one way. A person doesn't necessarily have to be touched to be affected by someone that has been touched. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that people don't want to talk about neither.
Yeah. Kendon, go ahead.
Now, piggybacking off of what you just said, getting vulnerable a little bit, my sister, she's going through a mental illness, and she's thinking that everybody's touching her kids, like my moms, my pops. And now, like, it's prohibiting us from even interacting. Like, I can barely interact with my nieces the way that I want to. Mind you, we grew up in a household, the same household. Mama like, nah, boys over here, girls over here. You know what I mean? So it's none of that. But now I can't even interact with my nieces the way that I want to, because of what my sister has, you know.
Because it's not, that's a trauma that has not been properly treated, and now it's spread throughout the entire family, even though the entire family has not been molested.
Right.
Yeah. That's the thing, and that's why I say it's very important for people to take into consideration that, you know, it comes with mental illness. It comes with a lot. You don't just stop at that person. It affects that person and that entire litter that person has.
Yeah, mental health, I think, is one of those factors that plays into a person believing that that's okay, you know, or being okay with doing such horrible actions to a person. So I think that's one of the factors we can work on for sure.
Yeah. And so it was somebody in my family that ended up touching somebody else in my family. His brother ended up jumping on him, beating him up real bad. And mind you, the whole family is against him, because that's a no-no. But then now it's years later, and he's nowhere around the family. He's on drugs real bad. And so even though we don't condone what he done, I also look at that side as well, you know what I mean? Where he's being pushed away from the only people that he ever knew.
And the question is
wait, let him finish, and then you get
Yeah, but basically, like, it's really, that's what it is right now. Like barely see him, like, only at funerals a couple times, but you can just see it on his face, like, it ain't the same like it was when he was around his family. And even though, that's not condoned whatsoever, but, like, internally, I think about that as well, too.
Go ahead, Shanna.
A lot of the times that I've noticed within my own family that when people do things, usually they wasn't protected as a child, and usually things like that don't just happen. You know what I mean? It stems from somewhere, and that's why I agree with her when she say accountability, because I feel like if people was to hold people accountability, it wouldn't stretch so far into families. And that's exactly where it come from. I'm pretty sure that whoever that person was, something happened to that person.
Yeah.
Or they witnessed something, and nobody took the accountability to protect that person or to save that person or to sit him or her down and say, you know what happened to you wasn't right. It's a lot of, I'm not saying that, what they did was okay, because no, you didn't like it, so you had no business doing it to somebody else. But what I'm saying is that who was the person that introduced that to that person?
Yeah.
How was that allowed? And then how was that allowed? And then knowing that happened to a person, and then you allow them to be around more children.
Yeah.
Because you can keep them around adults. You can know things that have happened in your family, but you should definitely know if a person dealt with that type of trauma, they don't need to be around people that can't defend themselves or can't speak up for themselves. And I'm not saying, oh, you got to treat them like a criminal, you gotta badger them, but action.
Yeah.
It's about action and accountability. Holding the person, hey, I know what you do, so I can't allow you around this group. This is a child's party. You only invited to the adults party.
Right.
That's if you want to deal with that person.
Right.
But I feel like if you know somebody is involved with that type of activity and you allow them to be around children, you just as responsible.
Man.
I feel like when you choose not to address the root of an issue, you end up risking the dangers that come with that. Like, if I choose, like, just like you just said, if I choose not to address the person and why they did what they did, they are now at risk to put whoever else in a situation. I was reading a story not too long ago where this kid, he had moved into a foster home. He had told them, I don't feel comfortable being around other children. I don't feel like I'm equipped enough to watch these children. But somebody had a foster child come into their household with their kids that were their biological children, and the foster kid raped one of the children in the household. And fast forward, he's in jail, and they're asking him, like, why did you do what you did? And he said, I told the mom I was not equipped to watch these children. She made me, and this is the situation we're in. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying, like I said, like you said before, that does not mean that it was okay. But when a person is letting you know mentally, I am not able, we need to learn to listen to the people that are around us. Like, your kids are not lying to you when they say stuff like that. Like, I think a person's biggest fear when it comes down to being open and being vulnerable about sexual abuse is that the person that they're telling is not going to believe them. And that's a real thing. That causes a whole other level of trauma, because there's so many different ways that kind of trauma can go. It can go to the point of being extremely promiscuous and strung out and being on a blade and doing all these different things. It can go from a person being so sexually oppressed that they don't want to do anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's so many different forms of pain that come out of these kinds of situations, and it's not fair. It is heartbreaking to know. I've had so many different women that I've had these kinds of conversations with, and it is unbelievable how shameful a lot of these women feel. Like, they can't come forward, they can't talk to anybody until I do have these conversations. And I'm like, it's people you would never even think of, people that you think are protected 100% of the time, that they're safe, they mom been on their head and been real protective of them their whole life, and it's like, those are the main people that are being hurt and victimized and made to feel like they can't open up to anybody, they can't share their stories.
Okay. Why do you guys think that the men that's committing these acts aren't held accountable, and do you think that they are being protected by the black women?
Women do it too.
Yeah,
I
was just about to say the people that are committing those acts.
I was gonna say that a pedophile come in any sex, any race, any age. I mean, people, like I said, it's almost like a disease. Like once a person's been touched and then you expose that person to other vulnerable people, you gotta expect that bad things gonna happen. That's like bringing gasoline in a match. You know, things is gonna happen, and it's like you gotta make people accountable. You gotta open people up. You gotta make people feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And I feel like women do it too. I know men that's been molested by women, and I know guys that been molested by guys. And then I feel like it's not okay for men to be molested. Everybody is so quick to protect women, but what about the boys? What about the boys?
Agreed. Come on.
It's more men get touched than women, believe it or not. But the men will never say it.
They will never.
They will never come
I
forward.
don't think that it's
So
more
look,
men.
we at the table. I was one of those men.
Yeah, but I don't think that it's more men that get touched than women. I do think that women
Are more vocal.
are more vocal. Yeah, and also people feel more privy to getting in women's business as far as sex is concerned anyway.
Yeah.
You know, she fast anyway, and like that mean that a grown motherfucker's supposed to be helping her be fast. You know, it's sickening. And the family that I'm most interested in is gangs. You know, people, it's all sorts of allegations about rape, and I really trip off of how if you were somebody, nobody will say nothing to you. You know, if it's a rinky-dink home girl, they don't give a fuck. You know, it's just like whatever. It's a big, humongous rape culture in gangs, in the hood. A motherfucker will watch you grow up from a itty bitty person, be your uncle friend, mama friend, all of that, and yeah, and be trying to do something to you.
And then those same men that have those big titles or whoever they think they are, instead of people holding them accountable, guess what they do? They say, "Oh, she's a flip.
Yeah.
Oh, she's a ratchet.
Yeah.
Oh, she's a slut. Oh,
Yeah.
she came because of this." But in all actuality, they saying, "Oh, come over here. We got some plays. We make some money together. I can show you how to get it."
Yep.
And it's not what you think when you get there.
I think that's so crazy how you say that, because it goes back to accountability. And then you can see it with especially men. Like, let's say, for instance, if somebody is molested or somebody is raped, men, I'll never understand why men don't hold other men accountable. For example, I remember discussing with an A&R about the whole R. Kelly R. Kelly situation with Aaliyah. And the man, he was working on trying to get R. Kelly out of jail because he does music and he writes for R. Kelly. He helps with that and things. And I just remember him saying, you know, "Oh, well, Aaliyah was a hoe." I said, "I don't give a damn if she was a hoe. She was 15 years old and R. Kelly was 27. If you sit here in your mind and you think something about that is okay, first of all, I don't give a fuck if a 15-year-old approached you like that. You in your right mind would be like, yo, what you doing, baby girl?" You know what I'm saying? As a matter of fact, we're your parent at, but we also have to understand too, R. Kelly was touched. Even his own brother was like, "I don't understand what's wrong with that." And it's like, if you have a grown ass man in his 30s, 40s looking you dead in your face, "I don't understand what's wrong with that. She attracted to me too."
Yeah.
What? So I think it's so crazy how you say that, and it all boils down to accountability. You have to hold each other accountable.
And then it goes back to R. Kelly being molested by his sister, by a woman. So people are so quick to cut the man's head off, but what about the women that particularly? They get a pass every time.
So it's about imagery too, because I think a lot of times we talk about it from, say, a person who is old enough to know that you can say something like children. And even when it happens amongst children, say you can, like, a 12-year-old and a 5-year-old, those are both two children, you know. And so I think that it's beyond who you can talk to at your family table. It's about, like, what kind of movies do you have on in that room where the kids are just playing, you know. And then too, like, another aspect of that is where people say, why didn't you feel comfortable to say something? A 5-year-old doesn't necessarily know how to articulate, may have never even had the opportunity to explore or even dream about what a sexual encounter is like. So I think that that's definitely something that just going forward in our day to day, that if we speaking to somebody who's been through something, it's not, oh, why didn't you say something? Like, that might not be the right question to ask.
Right.
Yeah.
And I would go back to
100%.
saying that's exactly why this is important, because it should be talked about. This is something that parents should be talking to their kids about at the dinner table.
Yeah.
Because guess what? If you don't talk to them about it, the TV gonna talk to them about it. It's gonna happen at school. It's gonna happen at a cousin house, a neighbor house. You can't protect your kids from everything. You can't protect them from everything. So this should be a topic. Just like how when parents get together and they talk about their kids turning 16 and going to get a car, and they talk about all the different things, this should definitely be a topic that parents should, whatever you feel like your child is at the age that you need to talk to them, you definitely should. You definitely should take that risk, because why would you allow someone else to expose your children instead of you? Because you know you're going to do it with compassion. You're going to do it with love. You're going to do it with care.
Who all here is a sexual assault victim? I am.
Okay, so how many people have, it's either like you personally been exposed to it, or you know somebody that it actually happened to? Raise your hand.
I know somebody.
What's the question?
So raise your hand if you've been inflicted by pedophilia, or if you know somebody personally or closely that have been inflicted by it.
What's considered pedophilia? I was a teenager.
So I guess like underage, like under 18.
Yeah.
So like raise your hand so that we can see it.
Or you said or we have been exposed.
Like if you've been inflicted by it, or if you know somebody that has been inflicted by it. Okay, and then so, no, keep your hand up. I want you to keep your hand up if your family has sat down and had a conversation about the incident that took place in your family.
It wasn't in my family though.
So
It was in
only
my
one
main
person.
family.
So your family is the only family that acknowledged what took place.
It was the reason
well,
why
I didn't know.
for my family, for what happened was it happened not to my generation, but a generation beforehand. And being the fact that the person that it happened to was, went through a gang banging, selling drugs, going to jail, all these different things. And me being a person that I am, I'm very vocal. I talk a lot. I'm very friendly. Usually my family members, they feel real comfortable with me because I am a very protected person. I protect people that I'm around. So naturally, when something like that happened, I was the first person for that person to come to. And it was a devastating blow for me, because it was like, how do I go and, you can't help a person. You can't really help, or you can't really change what happened. But when you love somebody, or you damn near raise that person like your child, it hurts to know that they're dealing with these things, because it's not just the physical action. It's the mental part of it that comes with it. And you see the drugs, you see, you know what I'm saying, you don't see that person for a long time, and that takes a toll on you as well. Because seeing somebody that you love and then they just disappear from out your life, and then you finally catch back up with them and you're like, well, what happened? Why? I thought everything was good.
So give advice to people that need to create a safe place for somebody to come and be able to share that.
I would say that you have to let your family know that regardless of what it is, y'all family. And ain't nothing gonna change that. Can't nobody stop that, can't nobody change that. You have to make people feel secure. If they don't feel secure, or they don't feel like it's a safe haven or somewhere where they can go and speak openly about it, they won't. They will not.
That's true. I have a question. Go ahead. I have a question. So how do we feel about the fact that in our community, it really in general, when it comes down to a man having sex with an older woman, it's not considered to be rape? Like, for instance, we got 13. I know guys that lost their virginity at 13 years old to women that were 20-something, 30-something years old. How do we feel about the fact that that's so normalized? It's not viewed as rape. It's not viewed as that man being taken advantage of. It's just more of it's cool. Like, I got to
We just talked about that upstairs, and I was saying that I think that a lot of men don't even know that they have been sexually assaulted. And I was telling Raven that it's too many men that have told me that their first sexual encounter was with their babysitter, which is telling that the bitch was too old to be, if she old enough to be watching you and overseeing you, she too old to be having a sexual encounter with you. As a matter of fact, as a child, you too young to be having a sexual encounter at all. Even with somebody your own age. But I check my little homegirls all the time too about letting the other little homegirl tell her son, you fine, this my baby daddy, you sexy. It's like a thing where it's okay for women to do it. And I tell them, if the homie call your daughter his baby mama, how you gonna feel about that? It's the same thing. It's not cool. Like, stop doing that. And but you're right, it is more acceptable. And what helps it be acceptable is because we put into young boys' head that money and sexual conquest is the way to be a boy or a man, and so they look at it as such, even though I'm positive that as a child it's scary. Anything that is foreign to you, for somebody to be doing something sexual to your body that you just now learning. And, I'm sure it'd be some discomfort. So to have some discomfort with something and then, have to, celebrate it almost is a mental fuck anyway. Yeah. And that's why once they get into relationships, that's who and what we dealing with on top of our shit for being black females, especially developing. Even if you ain't hypersexual, just if boys like you and you a black girl, motherfuckers calling you a hoe, calling you fast, you ain't gotta like nobody back. At all. So we all come into these relationships with these things that we, that were given to us. Like we didn't even get to initiate our own, healthy experience with sex or romantic endeavors. And it's like, this is what we working with on top of all the black shit, all the just everyday coming into yourself shit, the life shit. Like we got all this shit on top of that.
Yeah, and you can see it in our community because you see, like I said, my father, I'm one of 30 children. You know what I'm saying? He had several baby mamas. Where do you think that came from? That's not something that he chose to. That was him being exposed and nobody being able to guide him in the right direction and making him feel like sex wasn't, it wasn't meaningful or it wasn't important. He was just out having sex. It wasn't sacred to him. You know what I'm saying? It was taken from him. So he felt like he was gonna go out and do his thing. He didn't take sex seriously, and that's where we fall into with all these men that have all these different baby mothers because they don't see the seriousness in procreating. Yeah, they don't see the seriousness in having sex.
But that go back to even earlier when we was talking about the rift between black women and black men. It's like it make me think about how we really don't look at our interactions as investments, like into ourselves, into our lives, into our people, into the just the whole of everything for us and anything connected to us. Like we don't even see it as what it is. It's an investment all the way down to a sexual act. Like it's an investment in a person to allow them to to know you in that way, or if you want to be ghetto with it, to see your fuck faces. Like I mean, it's an investment, and you got to be careful where you invest. It's a gamble, but I think that we throw our shit on the crap table way too much because we ain't taught to value it. It's nothing. We're nothing, and anything we do it don't matter. And and that's what we working with. But that's why these conversations are important, because then if we start valuing our our actions and shit and having conversations like this, holding it accountable, then when somebody does rob somebody of that act, then we will be like, you cut off like the McRib sandwich. We won't see you till the funeral. And it's true that people have usually hurt people. Yeah. Usually a motherfucker who doing some of anything has been done that way, has been overpowered, has been taken advantage of. But at what point do we make it a thing that people know that it's okay to not have no money in your motherfucking pocket and want this thing you can't buy, but once you steal that motherfucker, then that's not okay. So even if you are having thoughts or it ain't been woken up in you by you having been touched, once you touch, bitch, you out.
Right.
Yeah. It ain't no consequences though. Yeah. Right. Especially if you big so and so from somewhere.
I'm gonna jump in and say, I agree with all of what you guys said. I think that black men do need to come into the realization that they have been inflicted, because I think some of them really do just think that it's cool, right? And then I think that it creates for them to have hypersexual expectations of women that necessarily may not come from that background or have been exposed in that way, where you sit up there, now you are encountering a person and you're in a relationship and now your partner's sitting up there asking for you to have threesomes because you alone is not pleasing to him. So I I think that it really does start with the accountability and necessarily realizing that you have been inflicted, but I do think that's a painful place for people to tap into. And I think that as Black women, we really need to be equipped on how to handle those type of conversations when our men do come to us in vulnerability, to be able to even express themselves in that way. Not only have they been molested by women, but especially if they've been molested by men.
Agreed.
Because when our Black men are getting out of jail and they sit up there coming and they sit up there being physically abusive to their women, and they necessarily inflicting all of this anger into society, into the world, and into our community, we really need to look into how we necessarily can support them as they come out of that, because these Black men aren't telling us what's going on when they are in jail. They're not telling us everything.
Or in general, really.
But
that is true.
I'm gonna say this. It doesn't. Okay, let me figure out how I'm gonna say this. We definitely have to create a space for men to be able to have feelings, because I feel like so much. A lot of relationships, you see that the man don't get to have a feeling. He don't get to say, you know what, my feelings was hurt. He don't get to say, oh, you know, well, this happened to me. He don't get to say that, because the moment you do, everybody gonna say, oh, he gay.
Yeah.
And he might not necessarily be that, but every time he comes out and tell the person that happened to him and everybody says that, he will start to believe it.
Absolutely. And I feel like I know men who have never confirmed that they've been taken advantage of sexually, but you can see it in how they move, in how they live their everyday life, in their obsession with women, and their even down to and I'm not saying that homosexuality is always comes from the man being molested, but I know I've had an array of different men who live that lifestyle and have told me, like, my first experience came from another man taking advantage of me. And I also know men who are so protective of themselves and are so angry and so just tight-fisted about the situation, because they're like, I cannot be allowed to be looked at as anything less than a man because of something that I could not control. And my heart breaks, but I also consider it such a privilege when a man, especially a Black man, takes it upon himself to open up to me when it comes down to that stuff, because that's not easy stuff to deal with. You know what I'm saying? We all, doing any kind of inner work, doing any kind of healing is a journey. But that, specifically sexual abuse for a Black man, is a topic that
never gets discussed.
Ever.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean when I say swept under the rug, because they're like, I'm going to take it to the grave with me.
They're not provided a place to be able to express themselves in that way. And I think, like, us being a part of the Black community, we need to figure that out.
Yeah.
Because if not, like, we'll just necessarily have broken men just wandering in the world. And I don't think there is a way that you can really contribute to yourself being inflicted with something like that and holding on to something like that.
Yeah, I agree.
Anybody else want to jump in? Roman, you haven't spoken. How do you necessarily think that Black families should deal with pedophilia?
It's all right. It's okay.
Hand them a tissue, Shana.